so now we have the image in Lightroom, having done the basic edits, and now we want to do the sky replacement in Photoshop. So what we do now is we go to Photo, Edit in Adobe Photoshop 2021. What this does now, it opens this edited image in Photoshop. You'll notice it's a raw file in Lightroom, so it's still a raw file as it moves over to Photoshop. It takes a little while to open in Photoshop. That's purely because my machine is quite slow. And here we have it. So it's still the raw file, but as soon as we start doing things to it, it will become a TIFF. Right, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to have a look in my library where I've saved lots of different photographs of skies, so we can choose one that I think will look nice with this particular photograph. So let's have a look. There's various sunsets. I think I've got a sunrise sky, which I think would look fantastic on this particular photo. Yeah, let's try this one. Let's try this one. So we move the sky image on top of the photograph. I'm going to drag it down so that it just touches the horizon. And drag it up to the top. Hit enter. So there we have the sky, and I'm just going to change the blending mode from normal to multiply. Just gives you an idea of how it's going to look. Oh yeah, this looks really good. So this background image, which is the sky, we're going to hit Control J, which will create another copy of the sky image, and then on the copy you'll notice the sky looks a lot darker now because there are two copies of the sky photograph on top of each other, so it's a lot darker than it was when there was just one there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to edit, transform, flip vertical. What that does, it turns the copy of the sky upside down, and then I'm going to click the move tool, hold down the shift key and drag down the copy of the sky to the bottom part of the photograph so that it just meets at the horizon. Okay. Yeah, well, that looks very good. I'm now going to merge the two skies together to form a single layer. So merge layers. So now the skies are all in the same layer. The next thing I'm going to do I'm going to do another edit here. I'm going to edit, transform. I'm now going to flip horizontal because I think because of the original photograph the brightest part was on the right hand side, so I'm going to flip it like that so that the brightest part of the sky is also on the right hand side. It's going to make the shadows look more realistic when it's on that side. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're going to hide the sky so that we can see the underlying photograph, and I'm now going to use the quick select tool to try and select just the top part of the image where the sky is. Oh, that's too much. Use the negative sign. What we're doing, we're selecting. We've lost it all. Let's use the lasso tool. Start again. This is the most time consuming part of the exercise, is just selecting the right part for the sky. So having now selected the sky, I'm going to right click, select inverse, so it's now selected the bottom part of the photo. Now we're going to go back to the sky layer, and the part that's selected is the bottom. So what we're going to do now is choose filter. Oh no, before I start that, let's just see how it looks in multiply. Yeah, see, it's looking very, very interesting now. On the bottom part of the sky, I'm going to choose a filter and blur and Gaussian blur. What that does, as you'll see, it makes the bottom part of the sky blurred, really to give us a colour cast in the bottom part of the image that matches the overall lighting of the scene. It also makes the reflections in the sea not quite so overly clear, which is more realistic. So then we deselect that selection and we'll go back there. That looks excellent. Now the only thing wrong now is that the sky is too much in this area and this area, so on the rocks in particular and the buildings. We need to reduce the opacity of that sky there. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, having selected the sky layer, we're going to create a layer mask, and then we're going to brush in using black, which conceals, so it's going to conceal the sky, and we're going to use a brush tool. We're going to use a normal brush, make it a bit bigger than that, with 0 hardness, quite a large brush, and I'm going to go start with a 20% opacity, or 21, yeah, 22, let's call it 22. Make it slightly bigger by using the right brackets, and we're going to brush in a concealing effect so that the sky isn't quite so prominent in these areas where you wouldn't expect it to be prominent. See what's happening here? It's removing some of the effect of that bottom part of the sky from these objects, because it was probably too much before. I'm going to do the same in the sea, so it's not quite so prominent, but still has the colour casting. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to reduce the size of the brush now to do the bits near the edges. Quite painstaking but effective. The longer you spend doing this type of editing, the more realistic it's going to look when it's finished. Back to a larger brush, just carry on brushing here. So each time I brush over these objects, the effect of the sky reduces somewhat. I don't think I'm going to go on the sea anymore, just a bit more on these rocks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, the image as a result of that sky being, oh no, there's a bit more that needs doing here. Probably have to increase the opacity of this conceal brush, maybe to 30. Yeah, just realistic. You see now why I moved the sky so that the bright part was over on the right, because that's where the light is coming from, as you can see on the rocks. Yeah, that's good. Now the only thing that's happened here that's bad is that the overall image has become a bit darker as a result of the sky being replaced. And I'm just going to add a curves adjustment just to lighten the image very, very slightly. Not to do too much, but just a touch. Yeah. So that's after, that's before. You see what's happened there? It's just brightened the image just a little bit. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to merge all these three layers together into something known as a flattened image. See this flattened image? That's now created one single layer rather than the three that were there before. And now that it's just one layer, I can now go to File, Save, and it will save this image now with the sky replaced back into Lightroom, where we can do the final edits. Let's see if it's back in Lightroom yet. There we go. Now I'm just going to close down Photoshop because that makes the machine run quite slow when that's running as well as Lightroom. So back into Photoshop, back into Lightroom, where we're going to do the final edits. You'll notice now it's now a TIFF file. So what do we want to do here? We probably want to do a graduated filter now on the sky, just to make it a little more dramatic. It's like similar to what we did before. We're going to reduce the exposure in the sky. To about that point, with range mask and luminance range mask, so that it doesn't affect the buildings or any. Yeah, that's how I want it. It's done. I'm now going to use a radial filter just around this area here. What we're going to do here is we're going to add a little bit of warmth to the radial filter in this sort of region. Just take it away from the rock here. Yeah. Now, for the radial filter, we're going to invert. So that now the effect is only inside that circle. We're going to increase the warmth a fair bit in that area. And maybe the saturation as well. Touch of contrast. Yeah, that looks good. So with the radial filter, that's without, that's with. Yeah, nice. What else do we need to do to this image? I think a little bit of dehaze would not go amiss, particularly on these rocks in the foreground, but it's actually affecting the sky. I think I might here do a local adjustment using the brush. What I want to do is I want to select the these rocks here because there's a bit of a haze there. I think I'm just going to introduce a little bit of dehaze where that brush. Yeah, that's better. And probably a little bit of contrast as well. That's better, I think. Yeah. Now the final bit of the jigsaw is to add a small vignette. The only purpose of the vignette in this case, well, in most cases actually, it's to darken the corners of the photo so that the viewer's eyes are drawn in to the brighter areas. Normally the eyes go to the brightest part of the photo as a natural tendency, but just adding a small vignette to the corners helps that to happen. So that's done. Okay, so I now want to, let's have a look at the before and after, just to the final edits. So the before on the left, after on the right. So you see we've slightly dehazed the rocks and we've made the sky a little bit warmer near the horizon. Yeah, I think that sky is pretty good. It transformed the image. I think you'll agree it's much more interesting now than it was with a pretty boring sky, or washed out sky as it was before. So I'm now going to go back into the library. I'm going to export this, and this is actually version 3 because I did a couple of others where I replaced it with a different sky. So that's now taking it out as a JPEG to this one. So version 3. So that, yeah, that was another one I did. Let's have a look at these others. That was, I think actually this was, oh yeah, that was without changing the sky. You know how we flip the sky horizontal to move the bright part to the right? This one actually I think may work better. That's the image without the sky. That's a different sky. That was a sunset sky that I used in this case, and that's the one that we've just done. I hope that you have enjoyed that little exercise, and if you liked it, please subscribe to my channel and click the like button. I hope to see you back again when I have another project to discuss. Bye, over and out.